I'm Diane Simon. I'm a watercolor photorealist artist, and I'm glad you're joining me today for the Florida Watercolor Society 50th anniversary. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about busting the myth of painting crystal. This is the painting that I did, and I've done several of this collection of liquor bottles in decanters. I'm thrilled with them. And I think the biggest challenge that we all have is that it's too challenging. Well, when someone says you can't, that's the challenge I need to hear, because I'm the one that will immediately say, watch me try. Now, if I try and I fail, I've learned something along the way. But if I don't try at all, I'll never know whether I'm going to succeed. I don't do jigsaw puzzles, but I have to tell you that painting crystal is much like putting pieces together in a jigsaw puzzle. So instead of painting the actual lines of the crystal, you have to remember that there's refraction. It's going to be looking through to another object, and you're going to have all kinds of distortion. So instead of painting shapes, you're going to paint values, and that's the key. So the first thing, I'm going to put this aside because we don't need this anymore. This is just for something you to refer to. I think the hardest thing is actually finding an object to paint. And I will tell you that I like to go to thrift stores. I don't own Waterford Crystal, but this is a little piece that I picked up. And I don't know if you can see the refraction on my paper here just from the overhead lights, but this is the thing that makes it particularly interesting. And I brought a crystal goblet as well. Now, the thing is that you don't want 5, 6 crystal goblets all in a row because it's kind of boring. But you want to be able to take one piece and maybe put another piece down on its side, put some fruit, put a flower, build your composition, but you don't have to spend a fortune on it. With the new digital cameras, it's so easy. You just take multiple photos. And when you find a couple that you like, then you break it down to 2 to 5 photos. That's when I do it in black and white, like this one. This is one that the same one that I showed you that we painted. I do it in black and white, and I say, do I like the values? Is it a strong composition? In truth, it probably isn't a very strong composition, but because I liked it, I did it anyways. Rule of composition is usually rule of thirds. You should have 3 objects. So having said that, I just met the challenge regardless because I still liked it, and I liked the gold in here, the brass tag. You can see there's multiple shapes in here. At this point, after I do this, then I blow it up to the size that I'm going to paint. This is the first really strong key I'm going to give you. You need to key your paintings. What do I mean by that? I mean that I want you to punch a couple little holes at the top. Now, why do I do that? It's a real easy solution. If I have to redraw something on my painting, I now can line it up perfectly. You do not punch through the watercolor paper. You only punch through the patterns. Okay? So I've punched through the patterns, and from there, I go to transfer. I take it at the top only, and I use Sorel paper. That's what I use, is Sorel graphite. I like this a lot. It comes in multiple colors. It's not waxy. However, if you go to apply it and it goes on too heavily, you can always use a dry cleaning pad. These are usually sold in the drafting section of an art store, but they work very efficiently. They actually have like a kaolin center, and you tap it here, just loosen it up, rub it over your graphite drawing, just brush it off with a dry brush. Again, dry brush, and that will remove any excess graphite. Now, when I do the transfer with the Sorel, I only do a portion at a time, and I use a red, sharp-pointed ballpoint pen. Not a Sharpie, not a gel point. You want to have a ballpoint pen. And then I go around all of these shapes. When I'm doing that, I also have the color reference that I've blown up It's not to actual size, but it's pretty close. I use this to find and define all of my shapes. It's not these hard lines that you know are in the crystal, it's the shapes within it. This is the most time-consuming part of the whole process, is to define all the shapes. It took me almost as long to put the pattern on as it did to paint the first portion all together. So just bear that in mind. Again, if I tape it only at the top, I can easily lift it up to see what's the degree of my tracing when I'm putting it on. So, and I always keep the color next to me so that I can see. It works really well. So now we've keyed our painting, we've transferred it on, and now it's time to start painting. So, I'm going to put this so that I'm able to paint, and put these off to the side. One of the keys to painting, and I use a pretty, I guess I've got 33 colors here. I think that's what this holds. A lot of people want to know what paper I use. I am a big fan of Fabriano, soft press. However, for class and study work, I quite often use Canson and or Strathmore. I always put my piece down lower than I'm going to use because I want to have some wiggle room if I need to. But this is the way I start. And I'm going to start by painting the top first. I am right-handed. I always like to start from the top and work to the bottom so I'm not putting my hand in it. However, for me to see these little fine lines from this distance, almost impossible. So here's the really good tip. You want to turn your painting upside down. Okay? So I'm going to take my tape off so it's not in the way, because I have keyed my pattern so that if I need to put this back on, you can see I can just line up where I put the little holes in the paper. It works so well. Now, I'm sure you've read the book, Drawing from, I think it's the Left Side of Your Brain, Betty Edwards, and this is the same concept here. If you don't look at it right side up, then you have a tendency to also be able to paint exactly what you see instead of what you think you see. Unlike most watercolor artists, I do not paint from light to dark, not on crystal. I like to define exactly what I'm going to do in values. The other little hint that I forgot to mention is that when I've got real strong darks, I will put X's on my pattern. You may have to actually zoom in on this to see this. I'm sure you'll be able to, but I do have some X's on here. And I use almost exclusively American Journey watercolors. They work for me, and that's all you need to know. The best tool I have in my kit is my sponge. Controlling the water in watercolor is key. I have a multitude of brushes. I have everything here from silver black velvet, I have Lowell Cornell, and I have Escoda. So my tip is buy what you like to use. I'm going to start here, and when I start on something, I put my finger where I'm going to be. It just helps me define exactly where I am. So, I'm using a little Royal Amethyst and a little bit of Janet's Violet, and I can see this is a real strong dark here. And it goes up, and then it comes down here. Do you see where I am? I think you probably do. I like to throw in a little bit some other colors so it mingles a little bit. I don't like to mix everything on my palette. I like to have it mix on the paper. I think it's more interesting. Has anybody noticed yet that I'm not using any masking fluid? You're right, I don't. I don't use very much of it. I find that if I want to leave my whites, I leave them. If I paint over them by mistake, you know what? Then I go in and I put it back in, and I use either titanium white watercolor or titanium, I use titanium white watercolor, or white gouache, either permanent or non-permanent, or I can put in little tiny dots with a uniball white gel pen. All of those work. They all work very efficiently. Oops. Get my brush dirty. Okay. Now I'm going to throw in a blue because I can see the blue on the edge. I paint fairly dry. You know what? And if I make a mistake, you know what? I can guarantee you that nobody is going to have the original photo to look at to compare and say, you know what? That was wrong. Because I make sure they don't have the original photo. But are you seeing how this is all going to come together? And I let it mingle. I let it mingle. It's all good. I'm always trying to control the water, however. Here's another really, really strong dark. I have that a tad too close, which is why I keep hitting it. Here's another real strong dark, and we're right there. That actually looks like it has some brown in it. Whenever you're painting crystal, it's always looking through to see what's in the background. That's the beauty of crystal. It's transparent. And you can see I'm not really painting. I'm going to put my real strong darks in first, instead of painting from light to dark. This helps me establish my values. I think painting crystal, that's the key. There's so many highlights in crystal, but you want to get your darkest darks in first. Okay, now that's right there, and there's another little spot right up here. And this is extremely dark down here, so I'm going to throw in a little bit more of my purple. I am not careful. Some people gasp when they see me put my already dirty brush into a clean palette of paint. But the truth of the matter is I don't paint pure anyways, so it really doesn't matter. Do you understand what I'm saying by saying pure? What I'm saying is that if the color has to be a pure color, I can always squeeze some more out of the tube. But I absolutely do not need to have it pure all the time. There's a line that goes up there. This is much stronger on this side. And that goes almost up to the top. Inside is this real beautiful blue. And they touch. And it goes to a yellow on the end. Now I'm going to wait on the yellow primarily because if I don't, the yellow and purple will make a gray. We don't want mud. So I'm going to wait on that just a little while. But I can put this one in, which is a nice big rich shape. You know, I've painted this a couple times now, and I can tell you that no two are the same. Now, do you see how I've left that white line? And that seems to work. It goes out to a more of a lavendery color. Almost a blue. Whoop, cat hair. I have a cat. She sits on my palette, she sits on my paper. She's the love of my life. Here we go. Now you've taken that hard edge and softened it. You've just softened it automatically. I'm going to let that dry, and I'm going to find some more spots. There's another real strong area. right here. You see that? Again, I'm trying for my darks first. I find it easier for me. The other, you know, a lot of times when we're a little bit intimidated by painting crystal, we say, oh, well, I'll try a little piece. I'll just do a little one. Well, I'll tell you, it's a far more difficult to do a little one than it is to take your picture and blow it way up like this. Because if you can imagine trying to paint these little tiny shapes, you'd have to use like a double-aught brush. Just go for it. You know, you don't. Every time you paint, it isn't going to be, oh my gosh, this is a winner. You know, this is going to make it into a competition. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. Now there's some white. Behind this crystal, when I was taking the photos, was a string of lights that changed color all the time. So there were all these little white dots, which were the lights that were overhead. And I'm just going to put them in just like this, which means in essence all I'm doing is leaving the white of the paper, but that works really well. And then I can go in and touch all this. And then there's a pinky color that comes in here. You do see that I'm holding my finger on the painting. It helps me identify where I am, because it's real easy to get lost. I have trouble remembering where I am in the morning half the time, so. It's called age. Okay, here we go. Here's another real strong dark. Are you seeing how this is starting to come together in shapes? This goes all the way down here. Here we go. Now you're starting to see some of the shapes of the crystal that you probably didn't see originally. Now, the other thing is it's really nice. You know, maybe you don't like purple. Well, I got to tell you, these guys that had these decanters had them in every color in the rainbow. So I've got some of these photos that are in turquoise and some that are in green. And I really wanted to do the green one, or the yellow one actually. And my family all said, no, do the purple. So this is what I did. You see how I let that mingle, and that's fine. I didn't remove any of that, and I didn't remove any of the other. As it goes up here, one of my go-to colors on my palette to dull things down a little bit is periwinkle. Another similar color is verditer. I think that's how you say it. I'm sure there'll be somebody that knows better than I. But we're leaving in some of these lights. And if it mingles a little bit, it's okay. I can see a real strong blue right there. And you say, how do you see that? Well, here's another tip. I use a value finder. There's two. This is just my regular value finder, maybe 10 different shades from black to white. When I lay it on here, I try to find the closest value. Okay, the value of this one is pretty close to this. So I can bring that up here and say, is that pretty close to that? Well, actually, it's darker. So do I want to lighten that? No, I'm going to let it go. But let's go down here and see where this is. That's about where it is. I have a real hard time doing the value finder using black and white. That's pretty close. So if I really want to do it, I can take a red piece of Mylar and I use one eye and I squint at it, and it actually removes the color, and I say, how similar are they? Okay, I can see this is dark enough, but this is not. That line down here is not dark enough. So those are two little tips, and I stop in the meantime. I don't I don't try to paint the whole thing and then say, oh, this was all wrong, because then I'd have to paint it all over again. It's as simple as that. Whoop. And my background is going to be black, so it doesn't matter. But if it did, if you get it right away, usually you can get it off. I almost always use a piece of paper that's significantly larger than my focal point, just in case I do something like that. So one of the things I have to be careful with the the silver black velvet is it tends to collect water on the ferrule, and then I don't notice it, and then when I tip my brush down, then of course it goes all over. Okay, here we go. I'm going to make this much darker. There's a real dark spot. Kiss a fool, my nose itches. Here we go. Okay, so I've gotten in some of these lines, and you can see where I am on most of them. This is just above this. This is not quite dark enough. So I'm going to go in and darken it again. It also looks muddy, which I'm not crazy about. So I'm going to pick up some more red. Brighten it up a little bit. This is all that verditer blue. And I mix it with just a little bit of cobalt. I didn't have cobalt on my palette for a very long time because it's a staining color, and it seemed like I always had an issue with it. I ruined a perfectly good painting by using it once, and then I said, no, I'm not going to do that again. There's no white here. There is that color that outlines this. And down here are some pinks. My favorite pink is wild fuchsia. It used to be called opera, it's now called wild fuchsia. But you can call it. They have all kinds of pinks that are available. Here we go. And again, no one's going to have the original photo to look at. So if you make a mistake on a color value, it's not going to be the end of the world. This is a very dark, very strong dark down here. There's a dot right in the middle. So let's leave that dot. I'm painting around the dot. Now, I will admit, a lot of people don't like it, but I have a pretty steady hand so far. That doesn't mean that you can't do this. I will tell you that I've had people paint with me that had Parkinson's. Is it shaky? Yes, it is. Does it matter? No, it does not. Ultimately, it's going to be your painting. And if your lines are a little bit crooked or a little bit jagged, it doesn't matter. It'll be more impressionistic. Doesn't matter. You've done it. I mean, that's my whole thing, is if you at least try, then I think that you're a success. It's the people that say, oh, I can't. And when they say that in my classroom, I say, you're right, you probably can't today. Why don't you go down and get a cup of tea and have an attitude adjustment? Not the most popular teacher in the world, and sometimes it just doesn't matter. It's like having one rotten apple in your class. You just don't need the negativity. Are you seeing how this is going? I think this is going to be lovely. These blues are sometimes the most challenging part, so sometimes I like to mix enough of it that I know that I'm going to have enough color on the end. Again, I'm toning down that cobalt. It will lift a little bit easier, and I will tell you that periwinkle has a little white in it. It isn't opaque. Now, what does that mean to you? If you're in the Florida Watercolor, not much. If you're in the Transparent Watercolor Society, yeah, you might have an issue. They might not approve of your painting. They actually put it under a black light, and then it tells you whether there's any white in the pigment or not. Although they allow maples, so they may or may not allow this, I don't know. I don't know if you notice where I'm holding my brush, but it's way out here. I try not to do this. I find that, number one, my nose doesn't see well. My eyes don't either much. But I'm just going to throw in some different color in there just because I can. My painting, my options. Again, I always try to watch, especially when using this brush, that I've taken off the excess. There's a little bit stronger line in here, but you know what? There's a little bit of a space in between, which leaves that highlight. This starts to get darker. There's some darks in here. Now, why is that dark there? That dark is there, no doubt, because it's picking up more of the light from behind. Now, in here are some yellows. And again, you have to be very careful with your yellows and purples, because if you mix them together, you're going to end up with, definitely you're going to end up with some grays. So I'm going to throw in some Naples. Rinse off my brush. Take the excess water off, because that's the way I do it. I think I want to blot it a little bit. I don't want it quite that strong. Now I'm going to go into Janet's Violet, right here. Pretty wet. See if it will mingle. And it's going to go into some blue. And if the blue overtakes it, it's okay. It's okay. It's not the end of the world. If I throw in some ochre there, what's going to happen? The ochre and the cobalt are going to look exactly like Janet's Violet. A little tip. Real strong blue in here. If you lay in more than one color, as long as you're doing it after the paint is dry, you're fine. Okay, I want to get this line in. This is that real pale lavender. Being sure, well, to be on the safe side, I'll lay that down, put my hand on top of it. There we go. This is called giving it a little continuity, but I'm using all the same color. Okay, here's this yellow in here. It's right there. And I'm putting the yellow in after the paint is dry. That makes it so much easier. There's little dots of that yellow in a lot of places. This one is real dark right here. Okay. At this point, you're getting the idea that I am painting shapes. I'm not painting the crystal, but you can see how this is all starting to blend together and it's coming along very nicely. So, at this point, I'm going to switch gears a little bit because to watch me paint endlessly is like watching paint dry, and I don't like that much. But I did want to give you the hint about turning your paper upside down. It is so critical when you're trying to paint that far away from you, you're not going to be able to see the lines. So having said that, we're going to go to step 2. And I think just for the sake of, because this is still wet, I'm just going to put this down and bring this one over. Again, whenever I'm trying to paint the large objects, the larger it is, the better it is to get the largest photo that you can do. When I draw, let's start that again. When I photo my objects, I first of all print it in black and white because I want to see if there's strong contrast. That's what I want to do. I'm looking for contrast. If it's not a strong contrast, now down here this has a lot of gray areas and it's just really hard to define this. But this is real strong, this is real strong, so I think it will carry this, if that makes sense. But after I've done this, then I blow up my color photo so that I'm always painting from my color photo. I will tell you that I did a full sheet a few years ago and I had taken the photo and I had a 3x5 photo to do a full sheet. And when I got all done, I said, that is the dumbest thing I've ever done because I couldn't see any of the detail if I had blown it up, but that was in my beginning days. So you can see I've gotten this started. I've got a really nice beginning with all the lights and darks, and you can see how this is all starting to come together. I've got some blending. The yellow in here isn't as strong as it was on the first one. Does that mean I can't go back and change it? Of course I can. I can always go back and change it, but you do see that I have left some spaces. Now I'm coming down in here. The neck of the bottle I thought was particularly challenging, so I just blew it up as far as I could and did a color rendition of it here so that I've got it right here to look at. And you can see I've still got my X's. I can see where they are. Here is the actual background underneath this chain. But you're not here to learn about painting this. You're here to learn about painting the crystal. So let's stick to the crystal. Again, this is pretty monotone over here. But I want to be able to have it be enough contrast that I can actually see. So I'm going to go into that periwinkle and cobalt, and I'm just going to lay it in because the shape inside it is darker, so I'm okay with that. And there's just a touch of turquoise. Now, there's all kinds of turquoise out on the market right now. It's come full circle. A lot of different brands. I've been using Andrew's turquoise for quite a while. It's just a nice Caribbean turquoise, blue-green, and it's just a little touch of color. Okay, now that's pretty wet, and again, I paint pretty dry, so I'm going to take the water off my brush. I do it so well. I just rub it in my hands or wipe my brush on my pants. But we're going to go up here. It's a similar color here. We're going to paint around. I'm going to leave just a tiny line. Okay, that's pretty boring. There is a line back there. It delineates where the square bottle actually has a lip on the back that you're seeing, and it's a little bit of that lavender. So I can either mix some more lavender. I don't like to mix a lot on my palette. I prefer to have my colors mingle a little bit. So let's see if this is dry enough. Yeah, it is. Again, I paint fairly dry. So that's why I use a sponge. Okay, that added just a little bit, and I want to soften it just a little bit when it comes up here. Take the paint off, take the water off, soften the edge. Here's a darker color right here in this little triangle. I can't begin to tell you what all it's reflecting. I have no idea. And does it matter? No, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't make one bit of difference. There's a lot of whites in here, so I want to paint around these. And again, if I missed it, you know what? I'd go right to my white titanium. Or gouache. This is a pretty big area, so I probably would do gouache. There's some pretty strong lines right here on the neck. And it's actually following this line here. Do you see that? From there. So if that's a strong dark, then I want that to be a strong dark as well. There's no question. You have to have them, that's what I call continuity. Here we go. This is strong dark, and I know that. Why? Because I've got an X on my pattern. It goes above and below that line. I switch brushes and I can tell the difference. It's just funny how they work differently. They're all good. Don't get me wrong. I don't have a real thing about brushes, but I like to use good ones. People say, oh, well, I went to the dollar store. Well, I always try to make that analogy that if you paid a contractor and an engineer to design your home, would you really go to the dollar store to buy the tools to put it together? No, you probably wouldn't. You'd probably go to Home Depot and buy the best, absolutely the best that you could afford to buy to put the house together. Because you wouldn't want to make that much investment and then not have it turn out. So, and I feel the same way about my paper and brushes. It's worth it to pay a little bit extra and have something that I know is going to make it better. I always use, you know, I hate to say always, that just is so defining, but in truth, I generally use 140-pound paper. Have I used 300? Of course I have. Do I like to use it? I do, but for my everyday classes, I just find it very cost prohibitive, so I generally don't use a lot of 300. I do like it, and if I do my big pieces, yes, I do like to use the 300. And when I'm talking about big pieces, I'm talking about pieces for show. This is all pretty much all the same color. There's a little pink in there, so I'm going to grab just a little pink. And I'm doing what I call dance the brush. And this edge is very sharp, so I don't need to worry about, and it's darker than that. And if that bothered me, what I do is I wet it, and I don't pounce. I do this. And I don't use anything except Viva paper towels because they don't have any texture in them. And I particularly like the fact that they have no texture. Okay, this section in here has a little more pink in it. And then it goes to the blue. And down here, it's all giving it shape, isn't it? Okay, inside that little hoosie, inside the ring, it's this color. And here's that little touch of turquoise again. You know, those little spots of turquoise throughout the painting just seem to just bring a little bit of pop to it, a little brightness. You know, I have it here, 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 I have some up in here, and I have some here. I will have some more down in the glassware itself. This is that blue-green color. I'm going to mix some more periwinkle and cobalt. It's fairly light. I generally have down here in the corner of my palette, I have a little bit of my white. I didn't put it out today. It's not that I don't need it, it's just that I just said, well, I don't, for this I don't need it today. It's okay. And this goes all the way out here. And I don't worry about what's inside those links, because the links don't necessarily, what's behind here is this background. I love how this is just all starting to feel a little bit like glass. I will tell you that I've taken multiple classes on painting crystal. I watch a lot of videos. I think that the more exposure you have to any of this, the better you will be, and the more you practice, the better you will be. I personally think the most challenging part of the whole thing is actually getting the photo, getting the subject matter. So personally, I'm not opposed to using other people's work, photos I'm talking about. You know, there's several websites that you can go to that have featured glassware that you can use. You can't put them in competition, but if you're learning, you know, it's a good way to learn. That's all I'm going to say on that. It's a good way to learn. I need to darken some of these. This is darker around this edge. There's that little touch of yellow right there. And there's some that comes into that color because it kind of muddies it. And I don't like the color particularly, but it's there. So there you have it. Sometimes you have to put it in whether you want it to or not. This is just kind of a muddy color all the way down. Still, just a little touch of that turquoise over here. Again, it's just that little spark of light. Okay, so this is coming along. This is all very dark in here. You can see all my X's. Isn't there a song like that? All my X's live in Texas or something? Yeah, I think that's it. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my other brush that I felt I had a little better control with. Put in some of my really strong darks. Again, I'm not afraid to mix up my colors if I'm using ultramarine or cobalt. Ultramarine is going to be a little bit darker. I used that with a little alizarin, but I tried not to mix it too much. I tried to just let it happen. And then this is a real dark line here. You see where I am? This is a dark line here. You say, well, why didn't you put your lights in first? Well, I could have, but I didn't. Because I paint dry enough that the reality is that once I go to put in my color over it, it's probably not going to matter much. Because this is that real light blue. And it comes all the way underneath here. There's my drip. There's my drip. There's some pink underneath that. So just put it in. And I exaggerated it. You know, I'm not afraid to exaggerate the color a little bit. It's okay. There's some of that turquoise. And there's a lot of little sparkle in here. So I'm going to try not to paint all it. I'm trying not to paint it solid. How are we for time?
Oh, well, let's see, you're into it, well, let me stop the recording. It looks, well, what I'm going to do is, if you want to keep painting, I will fast forward sections.
Yeah, I just want to know where I'm at.
Oh, I'm going to condense it to fit, so.
I understand that.
Okay. Well, you want to know what time it is right now?
Yes.
Oh, that's good.
Well, I know what time it is. I'm just saying, how many minutes have we recorded?
Oh, hold on.
That's what I want to know.
Okay, just a second. I'll tell you. 48 minutes.
Excellent. Okay, that's what I needed to know, because I needed to have enough time to finish what I wanted to finish.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
All right, that's what I want. Are we good? Okay, so you can see how I'm laying in all of these little things. I'm going to put in my real strong darks right now, and when I do that, I am going to mix the color. And I don't want it to be a solid color, so I'm putting together my lavender and my blue. Here we go. And this is real strong. This is where having a steady hand helps. However, if you don't have, you can use the masking. I don't use anything but PBO, and then I buy these fine line applicators and I put it in that. It allows me to have quite a bit of control. You see, because I pushed on the brush, it's giving me some different colors. And I'm looking over here at my photo to make sure I don't go too far. But I want to still keep the intensity of my darks. So I'll go load my brush again. This comes all the way down into here. You see how my hand is rubbing this though? And this is where you may end up having to go back and put your pattern on because you're going to lose some of the color. Or some of your pattern, I should say. Okay. Now, I'm going to continue this, but because I don't want to leave a hard line there, I'm just going to soften that edge so that when I go to put my dark color in later to finish this portion, I can. I really want to get to how to finish this up because this is the last tip I have. This is very complex down in here. I have a lot of little X's in here so that I can see where those darks are. Excuse me. I mix my own black. I don't buy the commercial black, although I have in the past. But I want to put a black background on this. And I purposely didn't finish the top of this because I wanted it to be dry. But I'm going to show you what I do to finish the top, or finish the background. I buy clear, transparent shelf liner. It's not easy to find. I found some, like, I think at the dollar store or Save a Lot or Dollar General, one of those things. And you try to cut a piece that's big enough to cover the area, and you put it on. This is just a peel and stick thing. So I just wanted to do the top portion so that you can get the idea of how this works, because it's really slow. Okay? So I'm going to put it on gently because I'm going to remove some of it anyways. And then I get a very good, sharp X-Acto knife. And you don't cut through the watercolor paper, you just cut through this. I don't know if you can hear that. There's a divot there. Okay, I'm going to come around this side, get it started. Here we go. Now, even though I haven't painted this, it's not the end of the world. You know, number one, like I said, this is a sample. This is done specifically for the Florida watercolor. So am I going to finish this? No, I don't want to finish 3 of these, that's a for sure. So after you get that done, you carefully remove, you carefully try to match it so that you don't have a string. Okay, there, that's done. Put that in my glass. Put my blade up. Use a very sharp X-Acto knife. I will tell you that I have bought them before, and invariably the ones you buy, like, no matter where you buy them, the blades aren't very sharp. I don't know why. Maybe they plan it that way. After you've done that, you want to burnish the edge. Now I'm using the back of a spoon. You can burnish the edge with a letter opener. I have a bone folding tool. That works as well. But that's how I burnish it, so that I make sure that that edge is sealed tightly. Now, on top of that, another fool around. I'm going to kiss a fool someplace. I like to use a stencil brush. I dampen it just slightly. I don't dampen this, but I go right into my black. You say, oh my gosh. But it makes such a rich background. This is what you call scumbling. Now, because I haven't finished this, I can leave my little hearts if I want to, but the truth of the matter is I'm not going to worry about them. Some people like to put a coat of paint on first to make sure that there's no problems in the paper. However, I find that by putting on a nice rich coat of black with a stencil brush, it works really, really well. It gives you a nice dense black, and you don't have to worry about it. Okay? So I'm not going to do any more than that right now. I am going to take that off so that you can see how it protects the edge beautifully. Magic. Just plain magic. So you can imagine this whole thing being done, and when you get all done, I look at it again. I photo it, I photo the finished painting, and then I transfer it to black and white paper. And then I look at the black and white photo against the color, and I say, does it look the same? Or I use my little red viewfinder to eliminate the color in my painting and say, are my values strong enough? I try to do that periodically throughout the entire painting. There's nothing worse than to get it all done, the black on, and then you say, it's really not dark enough, and then you have to go back in and not spot the background. So when you're all done, it should look like this. This one happens to be a canvas that I had printed. for me for the purposes of today. But I think you can see that it's a very strong painting, and I think you'll be delighted with the change in the colors. I threw in some orange. Orange is my favorite color. It's going to be in every one of my paintings. And you can see the highlights of these turquoise blues that I popped in here and the golds. Just remember that the background is going to be what's behind this. A lot of refraction, a lot of lights, and I hope you had a great time. Hope to see you soon.